In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the rear differential cover on this Ford Ranger. There are two different differentials that Ford used on this truck, so make sure you have the right one because the covers are different. Let's get started. Now let's remove the rear differential cover. With a collection bucket underneath, I'm going to start at the bottom, remove all 13mm bolts that hold this cover on. I'm actually going to use a 1/2-inch socket because it fits better on these than a regular 13mm. Because mine is rusty, if yours isn't, you may be able to fit a 13 better than a 1/2 inch. The reason I'm starting at the bottom is so that if it starts draining, it doesn't get all over me or my tools. For me, this one's rounded off, so I'm going to hammer an extractor socket on it. There we go. Now, no bolts are holding this cover on at this point, so it's just the gasket in between the two surfaces. So I'm going to put the top bolt back on now. That way, if it does pop off while I'm trying to pry the bottom, it doesn't go flying off. This will hold it in place, and the gear oil will drain in a controlled manner into my collection bucket. Take a pry bar and a hammer, pop the bottom off. There we go. That top bolt did its thing. It held the cover in place. Now let's take this top bolt off and pull the cover away. Now we need to clean up the old gasket. If you had RTV, clean that up. For me, looks like it was a paper gasket of some sort. I'm going to take a razor blade and try and scrape the majority of it off. As you can see, it pretty much stayed on the majority of it stayed on the differential side. And the reason I'm using the razor blade is because it leaves a very clean, flat surface. It also helps to cut through where this is stuck on the differential housing, and it's less likely to damage this surface and more likely to allow the next gasket to seal up. If it's really bad for you, I guess you could sand it, use a wire brush or a very light sandpaper, but you don't want to damage this surface or gouge it in any way, or it won't seal up. All right, well, this is cleaned up, but in my case, because the surface is in such poor condition, I'm actually going to take a very worn out sanding pad, a fine grit plastic sanding pad, and just scuff up the surface to get rid of any other impurities and rust buildup that is here. Especially at the top here, there are some chunks which would prevent the cover from seating all the way. All right, this looks a lot better. This is ready to accept a new gasket. In my case, I'm just going to put RTV on here. So we can take this off, double check that no debris made its way inside here, and we can continue. Now I'm going to take brake parts cleaner on a clean rag and degrease this entire surface so we can put the cover on with fresh gasket maker. You don't want any oils on here, otherwise it won't seal up properly. I'm going to blow out all these holes so that the bolts can go in without any issues. Now take some RTV, put a thin bead all the way around, and we'll put the cover on. So now let's slide on the cover. I have my bolts ready so that as soon as it lines up, I can secure it on without smearing the RTV around too much. There we go. Start that one on. If you need to clean up the threads on your bolts, do this before installing it. But most of the time the threads should be pretty good since they're not exposed to any elements. They're inside the casing here. So I'm going to start all of them finger tight and get them bottomed out by hand. I'll let the RTV cure for a little bit, and then we'll come back and torque them. And you might notice I'm actually going in a cross pattern even when starting them by hand. That way I make sure everything seats correctly and evenly. That's the key here. You want it to seal up evenly. So what I'm going to do now that it's sat for a little bit, I'm going to snug them all in a cross pattern just by hand, get them close. And the torque for these is 33 foot-pounds. So once they're all snugged up, I'm just going to go around and torque them all. All right, let's torque them. Once again, 33 foot-pounds is the torque. I'm also going to go in a cross pattern for this. That way it seats evenly and the RTV spreads evenly. Now just to be sure, I'm going to go around in a circle and double check them all. Okay, cover's on. On the front part of the differential where the drive shaft mounts, you'll see this 3/8 drive plug. You'll need a 3/8 drive ratchet. I'm going to stick an extension in there to get a better reach. Loosen it up, remove it all the way, and we're going to fill this with about 2.5 quarts of 75 W140. You know that it's full when fluid or gear oil starts coming out of the fill plug, so just keep going until some comes out. So at this point, you should start seeing gear oil come out about halfway through. Oh, there we go. That's how you know it's full. Inspect and clean the fill plug. If it needs to be replaced, replace it. Now stick your ratchet back in here and just snug it up. All right, there we go.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.